In the quiet of Willow Creek, where loneliness weighed heavier than time, a single dog stepped into the lives of the forgotten, ready to change everything. In the quiet town of Willow Creek, nestled among rolling hills and whispering pines, the days moved slowly for the residents of Sunset Haven, a cozy retirement home. The seniors there, each with a lifetime of stories etched into their smiles and wrinkles, often found the weight of solitude heavier than the years they carried. But everything changed the day Valor arrived, a golden retriever with soulful brown eyes and a heart as vast as the meadows beyond the town. Valor wasn't just any dog. Trained by a local non-profit dedicated to pairing therapy animals with those in need, he was a canine with a purpose: to bring companionship to the elderly. His trainer, Emily Harper, a soft-spoken woman with a knack for understanding both dogs and people, had seen something special in Valor from the moment he bounded into her life as a floppy-eared puppy. He had a gentleness that seemed to say, "I'm here for you," and an uncanny ability to sense when someone needed him most. It was a crisp autumn morning when Valor first padded into Sunset Haven. The lobby, with its faded floral wallpaper and the faint scent of lavender, buzzed with curiosity. Residents peered from their armchairs, some skeptical, others intrigued. Emily knelt beside Valor, her hand resting on his sleek fur. "This is Valor," she announced. "He's here to keep you company, to listen, and maybe even to make you smile." The first to approach was Margaret, a sharp-witted 82-year-old who used a walker and rarely spoke unless it was to critique the cafeteria's bland soup. She eyed Valor warily. "I'm not one for pets," she said, her voice brittle. "They're messy, and I've got enough to deal with." Emily smiled. "That's okay, Margaret. Valor's here when you're ready. No pressure." She gave Valor a subtle command, and he lay down near Margaret's chair, his head resting on his paws, eyes soft and patient. For days, Margaret ignored him. But Valor was persistent in his quiet way. Each morning he'd settle near her, never pushing, just there. One afternoon, as the rain tapped against the windows, Margaret dropped her knitting needle. Before she could struggle to reach it, Valor gently picked it up in his mouth and placed it in her lap. The room fell silent. Margaret stared at him, then muttered, "Well, aren't you clever?" A faint smile tugged at her lips, the first anyone had seen in months. Word of Valor's charm spread through Sunset Haven. Soon he had a schedule packed with visits. There was Henry, a former jazz pianist whose arthritis had silenced his music. Valor would lie beside him as Henry hummed old tunes, his fingers tapping rhythms on the dog's back. "You're a good listener, boy," Henry would say, his voice thick with gratitude. Then there was Clara, who rarely left her room after losing her husband of 60 years. She'd sit by her window, staring at the garden, her grief a heavy shroud. Valor's visits began with him simply resting his head on her knee. Over time, Clara started talking, first about the weather, then about her husband's love for roses. One day she laughed, recalling how he'd once tripped over a hose trying to impress her with a bouquet. Valor's tail thumped softly, as if he understood every word. Even the staff noticed a change. The home, once filled with the hum of routine, now echoed with laughter and stories. Residents who'd barely spoken to each other began gathering in the common room, drawn by Valor's presence. He was a bridge, connecting hearts that had long been adrift. But Valor's journey wasn't without challenges. One winter, Margaret fell ill with pneumonia. Her room became a fortress of silence, the door closed to visitors. Emily worried. Margaret had grown to love Valor, calling him her boy. Without her daily dose of his warmth, would she lose her spark? Emily consulted with the staff, and they agreed to try something unconventional. With strict precautions, Valor was allowed a brief visit. Emily guided him to Margaret's bedside, where she lay pale and frail. Valor's ears perked up, sensing her distress. He gently nudged her hand, letting out a soft whine. Margaret's eyes fluttered open. "You stubborn mutt," she whispered, her voice weak but fond. "Can't leave me alone, can you?" For the next week, Valor's visits became Margaret's lifeline. She'd stroke his fur, her breathing steadier with each touch. The nurses swore they saw her color improve after his visits. When Margaret finally returned to the common room, leaning on her walker but smiling, she declared, "This dog's got more fight in him than half the doctors I know." Years passed, and Valor's golden fur began to gray. His steps slowed, but his spirit never wavered. He'd still make his rounds, tail wagging, bringing light to every room. The residents, too, had changed. New faces arrived, and some, like Henry and Clara, passed on, their memories cherished in the stories shared over tea and Valor's gentle presence. One spring morning, Emily noticed Valor struggling to rise. The vet's diagnosis was kind but clear. His time was near. The news hit Sunset Haven like a storm. The residents, many of whom saw Valor as family, insisted on a farewell. They gathered in the garden, where Valor had often romped with them on sunnier days. Each person took a moment with him. Some whispered thanks, others simply held him close. Margaret, now 88 and fierier than ever, spoke last. "You gave us more than companionship, Valor," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "You gave us purpose." She placed a woven collar around his neck, crafted by the residents, a symbol of their love. Valor passed quietly that evening, curled up beside Emily, his head resting on her lap. The grief was deep, but so was the gratitude. Sunset Haven wasn't the same without him, yet his legacy endured. The non-profit expanded its program, inspired by Valor's impact, and soon new therapy dogs arrived, each carrying a bit of his spirit. In Willow Creek, they still tell stories of Valor, the canine who didn't just provide companionship but wove a community together, one gentle nudge at a time. And in the garden at Sunset Haven, a small plaque reads, "To Valor, our hero, your heart lives on. Name your pet to honor his courage." Share their name with #HeroicTaleSandwings and let the world know how Valor's story inspired you. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales of extraordinary animals who change lives every day. If Valor's story touched your heart, give this a like and share it with someone who needs a little light in their day. Together, we can spread the love and legacy of heroes like Valor.